Good morning, New Zealand. It is Thursday. It is the 3rd of April 2025, but in the United States it's Wednesday. It is the 2nd April 2025, and it is Liberation Day. It is Liberation Day in the United States of America. Donald Trump has just finished speaking in the White House, and he has announced the liberation of the United States from the oppressive trading practices, tariffs, and currency speculations and mismanagement of other countries that have seen his country become, he says, the whipping boy and the easy mark of trading practices of other countries all throughout the globe. And into that, he has lumped us in the list of 44 countries that he put up in the White House and said, these are the people who are screwing us, and this is how we're going to screw them back in return. There was New Zealand's name. Listen, we had the same type as China. 44 countries. Mind you, not the same numbers put against ours. New Zealand has got on this is a momentous day. This is a momentous day for the history of the world in the 21st century. They will remember this day, Wednesday, the 2nd of April 2025, because it's a day in which the United States of America said, and Donald Trump in particular, you've been ripping us off forever. We're not going to take it anymore. So it was a bit like that movie, Network. We're not going to take it anymore. He's gone outside, gone to the window, opened the window and shouted, we're not going to take it anymore. And this is, and it needs to be said now, stop calling Donald Trump a right-wing politician. He is the most radical populist, in the sense of the proper sense of the word, president, probably that the United States of America has seen, and you'd have to go back to the 1890s, I would think. He is a radical populist president. And what he has done this morning will affect every one of us. It'll affect the globe. The United States is still the most, despite the rise of China, at the moment, still the most powerful economy on the planet. One of the most important trading partners, our second most trading partners, but obviously one of the most important trading blocs on the planet as well, if not the most important. And what they have done this morning is extraordinary. Well, our time, obviously, is in the evening, or in the afternoon, yes, in the evening in the United States of America, is announced what they call their Liberation Day. He's done it to an audience of people who he expects to be affected in a positive way by his changes. Farmers, auto workers, both, the people working on the factory floor and those who sit in the office management. He's done it in front of people who have businesses in the United States of America, who are, he says, unfairly disadvantaged by other countries, including New Zealand, he is saying, which is why we're on that list of 44. Actually, I would have thought from a New Zealand point of view, it's not too bad this morning, just quietly. But I assume that if you're not on the list of 44 countries, and there's about 200 countries in the world, is that right? It's 200 and something, according to the United Nations. Then that means there's about 160 countries that aren't on that list. Well, or maybe they are, I don't know, but they weren't the list, we'll find out, I guess, when the detail comes out, but they weren't on the initial list of 44. New Zealand is going to get a 10%, so all of just add 10% to our prices as we land goods in the United States of America, from wine to beef to manufactured goods. It's mostly wine and beef, isn't it, that are primary exports there, a bit of dairy. But there you go, 10% more. And this is why I'm saying it could have been so much worse this morning, because there was an expectation in some quarters in the United States and also in New Zealand amongst economists that would be 20%. New Zealand has escaped the worst of it, I have to say. New Zealand, Australia, and the UK are on 10%, which is the least amount of tariff that can be imposed upon us. Well, is the least amount of the 44 countries that are listed. That's the best way of describing it. Sorry. It's really interesting looking at the list of countries that Donald Trump's gone for, that most of them are Asian. And his argument, and to be honest with you, fair enough. Listen, for a long, long time, and I have enormous sympathy for Donald Trump on this aspect. For a long, long time, Asian countries in particular have manipulated their currency and their trading policies and imposed essentially tariffs of their own to gain an unfair trading advantage in international trading forum and across the globe. The Chinese, the Japanese, the South Koreans, the Indonesian, the Asian tiger economies, if you like, are to a good extent not based upon free trade, but the manipulation of monetary, fiscal, and trading policy in their particular cases to gain an advantage on and we, courtesy of Roger Douglas and Ruth Richardson, two stupid people that should be condemned forever and placed in a cave where they can squabble amongst each other over the bones that are left. These people deregulated the New Zealand economy thinking that the rest of the world would follow. Well, guess what? It didn't. And if you want to know why, in part, we've got 409,000 people, adult New Zealanders, sitting on welfare at the moment. Go back to the late 1980s and early 1990s when we decided that we were going to become the mini emperor and we were going to wander out into the world with our fine new emperor's new clothes and didn't realize, although everybody else did, we were naked. Well, that's worked out well for New Zealand manufacturing, for New Zealand industry. And we have been buffeted ever since by the least a Chinese corporate walla sneezes, New Zealand catches the cold. It's become that stupid and silly. Well, anyhow, this time someone serious has caught a cold and they haven't sneezed. They have blown away the world trading blocks this morning, or our time this morning, as I said. China's got a 34% tariffs on it. China's got 34%. Vietnam, 46%. Listen to this. Taiwan, 32%. Sometimes it's not good so being one of your mates, is it sometimes? Japan, 24%. India, 26%. Indonesia, 32%. Thailand, 36%. South Korea, 25%. Cambodia and Laos, I don't know what they've done to offend the United States, but neither are they fully functioning trading economies, nor are they democracies. Cambodia and Laos, 49 and 48%. If you want to land stuff in the United States from Cambodia or Laos, boy, get out of there now. Now, 20% on the EU, so they would have heard that as headline news. But like I said, only 10% on New Zealand, Australia, and the UK. Australia was particularly mentioned by Donald Trump this morning. He singled them out actually at one stage. He said they refused to take any of our beef. Well, they've got a beef now, but they refused to take any of our beef, he said, talking about to the US farmers in the audience. So, ta-da, they get 10%. His basic argument, though, is that he's only actually imposing tariffs that are half. Now, there's a reason for that, and I'll come to that in a second, that are half of whatever he regards, or the United States Treasury regards, as being the impositions that are placed upon goods coming into their country. So, for example, he says essentially if you add the trading policies, the tariffs, the currency manipulation of the Chinese, it means essentially that US tariffs, that US are facing tariffs of 68% if they trade with China. So that's where he gets, we're just going to go half of that. This is what the tariffs are if you're going to land those goods in in the United States of America. He said it's time to take care of the USA first and of its own peoples, its industries, its businesses, and its jobs. And I have to say, tariffs aren't a right-wing thing to do. So boy, can I say to all those political commentators out there saying, oh, Donald Trump's, the most right-wing president we've had. No. Tariffs aren't right-wing. Right-wing policy is essentially libertarian when it comes to trade. We don't get in the way. We don't regulate. We move out of the way. We say, let the invisible hand of capitalism take hold here. No. He's gone completely the other way. Like I said, it needs to be described as what he is, a radical populist president, determined, I have no doubt, with a degree of integrity to do, and I use that word, and sincerity as well. I use both of those words, to do his best for what he considers will advantage the United States of America, and stuff the rest of you saying, because you've been living off us, leeching off us for decades and generations. Will it affect New Zealand? I don't know. We'll get a better idea. I mean, Craig Stobo will be looking right now at all of the detail as it is. There's not a lot of detail coming out. There's been just that big chart and the sort of the rhetoric that's accompanied President Trump's remarks this morning. But Craig Stobo, after 11 o'clock, will be joining us to give us a little bit more detailed analysis than I'm obviously giving you now. But I just want to say, this isn't as bad as you think it is. There is a fear that there may still be other tariffs to come, and specifically placed upon agricultural goods. I think Trade Minister Todd McClay was worried about New Zealand beef in particular getting hit with a lot more than 10%, I can say, because that's, I think, as I said, that and wine would seem to be our two primary exports. I think there's also obviously aluminium and steel, on which there are already tariffs of a great more than 10% that have been placed. The US dollar is still trading, the New Zealand dollar is still trading at US 57.25 this morning. It hasn't moved in reaction to this because I suspect that it's not as bad as they thought it might be. There are a whole series of other countries at the moment go, breathe, breathe, breathe. I can't breathe. There are a whole series of economists and treasury types and places, mostly in Asia, it has to be said at the moment, going, is that window open? So, yes. The US stock market, though, is off 2% in early response trading. The Australians are going, oh, God, that could have been worse. But there you go. So I have to say, if this is US Liberation Day, we haven't got swiped as much as we might. It might not be over, but the world has changed today. The world has changed. Trade has changed forever. The United States has decided to use its enormous economic clout first and foremost to look after itself and its own. It is no longer going to be the world's banker, the world's security agent, the world's diplomatic, supremo. It is now decided to bunch upon itself, start to look at itself and its economy first, work out internally what it's going to do, and it's going to withdraw. It'll come back. Donald Trump won't always be president. Donald Trump might, if he's cured all the stuff, or he thinks it's cured anyhow, cured enough, might start to branch the United States out again. But this is a contraction of the United States of America, diplomatically, economically, socially, politically, and militarily, you would expect as well. They are not going to be. They've, for this moment now, surrendered their primacy in the international community as they look after themselves and get themselves strong again, because they think they've been weakened and ripped off by countries that have preyed upon their past generosity. No more today. And so he's used these words well, at least from a rhetorical point of view. This is the United States Liberation Day. It'll be fascinating to see how it plays. The left will hate it, but this will be ironic in actual fact, because the liberal left will now have to defend free trade. And free trade doesn't necessarily work in actual fact, delivering prosperity. It has seen since the late 1980s and the early 1990s in this country, when, as I said, we wandered naked out into the world and expected everybody else to go all nudist as well. And they didn't. They just kept their clothes on and God, the Kiwis have gone mad. Well, we had too. We've moved most of our manufacturing overseas and our jobs. How interesting and ironic that one of the Kiwi companies that's been hurt by this, most of all, is Fisher & Paykel. Frankly, they deserve it. I've got no time for them at all. Fisher & Paykel moved all the manufacturing overseas and left all those jobs behind in New Zealand. They betrayed this country and they betrayed this economy. They went to Mexico so that they could get cheap Mexican labor to export to the United States of America. They have a rat's reserve about New Zealand. And guess what? They're now moaning that, oh God, this is dreadful for us, a New Zealand company. Fisher & Paykel, you're no more a New Zealand company than any other brigand corporate out there. I don't have an awful lot of sympathy. But today is Liberation Day. It will change the trading environment internationally forever. We are still sitting here going, oh, I hope it's all over. But I'd have to say, if you were living in South Africa, India, Taiwan, Vietnam, China, Switzerland, I hates the Swiss, obviously. I don't. It's what happens when you sit out 2 world wars and you just profit on it from everybody else's misery. Switzerland really got socked today. They're right on that list, and they've been treated much worse than Europe and any other, I have to say, Western democracy. They'll all be recoiling this morning and go, oh. And if they think to retaliate, and this will be really interesting, Donald Trump's got part 2 to come. It's been a fascinating morning. It'll only get more fascinating. And I can't say, and I cannot say, I disagree with the sentiment. Listen, there'll be tons of New Zealanders because we like the idea of trade and we're a trading nation. But yeah, New Zealand has traded ever since our formation as a country. When the British arrived here, not Maori, when the British arrived here and started in the greatest empire in the history of the world and started to see a mercantile future for this country. When the British eventually retreated and then retracted completely and we became an independent country, our life is dependent upon trade. We'll survive this. We've survived a lot worse. We were once solely reliant. When I first was born, we were sending 85% of all our exports to the United Kingdom. They joined the European community. They said, oh, sorry, New Zealand. Yeah, we know you fought and died for us, but, needs must. Good luck. And we have found a way through that. We've found a way through the excessive, I'd have to say, policies of the late 1980s and the 90s in this country. We've stripped away our own protection. And I have to say, this morning, there'll be a bit of a sigh of relief in Treasury going, man, if that's it, we'll get through this. And we might even prosper